Hello and welcome back to the NRLW Weekly Podcast, all thanks to Light and Easy and Harvey Norman. I'm Ali Silva, an NRLW superfan, and as always, I'm joined by a legend of the game, the one and only Ruan Sims. On the show today, boy oh boy, was it a wet and wild weekend in Newcastle or what? As history was made in the very first NRLW Magic Round. Light and Easy Learning with Rue is back, so is What Caught My Sideline Eye, and we of course get to all of your listener questions. But right now, Rue, first of all, has all your washing from the weekend dried yet? And then we'll get into the NRLW Weekly Medal.
No. And definitely not. So that probably describes it. I feel like my toes are still wet and I've still got the chill in my bones. It was that fresh over the weekend, but you know what? Wouldn't have it any other way. It was epic.
Absolutely it was. We'll get into that in a little bit. But of course, it is now time for the NRLW Weekly Medal, which is where each week, Rue, you vote for your player and team of the week.
Yeah, this was a hard one to pick this week because there were a number of really good performers for a few teams, but I've gone with Tamika Upton this week. She didn't run for as many metres as she would normally do, but the impact that she had on the game for the Broncos just got them on the front foot straight away. And particularly her first try was incredible. So, for me, it was Tamika Upton, and followed very closely. I thought Jamie Chapman had a really great game at fullback for the Titans too, but Tamika gets the cookies this round.
I think that's not a surprise to anyone who was watching that game, especially in those conditions. I mean, it's not like we haven't seen Tamika be playing so amazingly as she always does, but it was almost as if that was like her looking like she's a cut above for the first time, as we've seen it, as sort of from the sideline in 2025. Like, it just felt like it was when Tamika was at the Broncos the last time round. Like, she just really had that game in the palms of her hands.
Well, she's actually gotten better since she left the Broncos initially. She's gotten better. And I think what really stood out for me, talking to her pre-game, she was really dialed in. Speaking to Ali Brigginshaw pre-game, and she said that Tamika is very challenging in a good way. She challenges people around her to be better, and that's what a leader does. Whether you've got the C next to your name or not, you need to challenge everyone around you to a high standard and hold them and yourself to that high standard. And I think that's what she does. And I've seen that really develop in her, and I think she is scarily probably only going to get a little bit better too. So I thought she was absolutely fantastic. But for me, it was really difficult to pick the team of the round because obviously the Roosters were so dominant again. The Broncos were dominant in their win. But I have to give it to the both teams of our game one of the weekend, Titans and Bulldogs, because it was pretty torrid conditions. They were the first two teams out there and they pushed each other to the limit, which I know we're going to get into later, so I won't go too far with it. But yeah, they share my team of the week this week.
Yeah, there were so many storylines that came out of NRLW Magic Round. So let's get straight into this recap of the weekend that was. I mean, it was incredibly challenging weather. I think it was nearly 60 mils of rain both Saturday and Sunday. There was so much wind, which really impacted the kicking game. But I think most significantly on day one, those two lightning delays. I mean, I think no one would have blamed fans for not showing up in those kind of conditions. But that, to me, was the most special part of this weekend. Yes, it was so good to see all the girls interact with each other and be excited for Magic Round. But the people who stayed, the people who showed up in the rain, and literally, like we saw this route, the people staying there trying to find those little patches of dryness in McDonald Jones Stadium during the lightning delays. I just thought you people are the backbone of this sport and where it's going, and it made me very happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have no doubt that the torrid weather held out a lot more people from actually being there in person. But it did mean that a lot of them watched us. So they still got their eyeballs on the game. But those intrepid few that actually did turn up and stayed there for the whole time was absolutely incredible. And I think it was actually about 60 mils on Saturday and 40 on Sunday is what we had rain-wise. So that was just crazy. And actually, I have to give a shout-out to the groundskeeper because the pitch held up right to the end. It only sort of got muddy when the rain stopped in the second game of the Sunday. that's when it actually started to get a bit churned up and muddy. But while there was still heaps of water on there, it actually handled it really, really well. So I think it's going to need a little bit of TLC, obviously, between now and when the next game is played on it. But yeah, they did so well just to maintain that and keep it game ready for all 6 matches back to back.
So we had this amazing festival vibe regardless, and all these passionate people who showed up, and they certainly got their money's worth with every single game. But let's talk about this first match, as you alluded to in your teams of the week, the first ever draw between the Titans and the Bulldogs. And we did say last week in our episode that we knew that that was going to be a really interesting battle, but I certainly didn't expect that.
No, I didn't expect it to go to Golden Point and we still have a draw at the end of it, because obviously we hadn't seen that before in the NRLW. So I sort of felt like there might have been a chink in the armour somewhere that one team could take advantage of. But I do have to say, also, also challenging for Player of the Week to me was Taylor Preston. Yeah. She single-handedly got the Bulldogs back into that game with her kicking game. And she was kicking 40-30s, which were actually 40-20s or 40-10s, into that howling southerly that was coming through at about 60 k's an hour from the southwest. So her kicking was vital to get the Bulldogs into the position that they were in. So she was another one that was very close for my Player of the Week. But yeah, it was an incredible game. And I thought the Titans obviously tidied up a lot of that ruck defence that they had issues with earlier in the year. The Bulldogs missing Alexis Tueniai, I think, was a really big loss for them, because she has such a great work rate. She can start on an edge, she'll come into the middle for them and sort of take a lot of those heavy carries and get them a lot of go forward. And then she can interchange between edge, back row and middle, and they get a lot of minutes out of her without burning another rotation. So I felt like they missed her, the Bulldogs. But yeah, it was such an epic game. And I know we saw a few times where both teams had some opportunities to hit field goals. They just didn't come off. Obviously, conditions were awful. We all thought that maybe Lauren Brown was going to pull another rabbit out of the hat and come up with a field goal and win it for her side. But, yeah, it was such a great contest. And, yeah, like I said, was really impressed with the way Taylor Preston's kicking game brought the Bulldogs back into it. Yeah, just what a game. What a match.
Yeah, and I have to say, at the end of the match when I was talking to Taylor, she said at a lot of points during that match she was squinting her eyes because the rain was so heavy she couldn't see. So to think that precision was possible in that is insane. And I think overall, when we got to the Roosters game and throughout the rest of the weekend, the completion rates were still really high.
Yeah.
And I think, again, it would have been so easy, and I think, again, it's the testament to where the game is at, that the quality of football in those conditions stayed really high. So I think, Yeah, absolutely. But see, the biggest thing from a playing perspective, as a player, I'd prefer to play in those conditions over that drizzly, greasy kind of rain, because when it's as torrid as it was, you just shorten everything up a little bit and you just be a little bit smarter. When it's greasy, you sort of think, I could probably push this pass, or you go to catch it and it might be a dodgy catch where it's sort of in front of you, but you think, I can normally catch this in dry weather, so you'll go for it instead of just letting it go. So as a player, I'd much prefer to play in the weekend's conditions over playing in that greasiness where you just don't know whether the ball's going to go to hand or not. But that being said, I also agree that I think the completion rate was absolutely top shelf, considering how poor the conditions were. It's only going to get better. The more that these players are exposed to different conditions like this, playing at night, playing twilight, playing during the day when it's hot, they're just going to get better and better. And so as this competition expands, we're going to see more and more of this, and the product on the back end of it, which is what we all want to see, will just continue to go on its upward trajectory. I think that overall, the weekend, we can say, hand on heart, was a success, because it put all of our girls on show, and it's only going to go up from here in terms of crowd numbers thanks to the weather. I think the only negative that has come out of it is going to come up in this next segment, Rue, because we did see quite a few injuries and a few things there that were concerning. But let's get into it. This is Learning with Light and Easy. From footy fans to players like you, Light and Easy helps everyone to eat well, feel great, and save time for the things that matter most. Rue, over to you.
Okay, so my light and easy learning this week, I was concerned with the number of high tackles that I saw, and also then concerned with the number of head injuries that came off the back of some of the high tackles, being that the defender may be getting themselves knocked out or just things like that. So to me, and because you're not here, I didn't want to do my whiteboard one so that it's a bit harder to do it that way when you're not here. So I thought I'd just go talk through one where it's really important where technique comes in here. So we've seen a lot of, like I said, saw a lot of high tackles, and we also saw a lot of HIAs, but a lot of them are happening quite early in the game. So it's not so much a fatigue thing. It's then, to me, if I'm looking at that, I'm thinking this is a technique thing. And a lot of times, a lot of teams are coached to tackle on the ball, which is absolutely perfect to stop the ball from moving. But sometimes you can get, if you just mistime it, you go a little high, it slips off the ball, or you get your own head in a really poor position. So a lot of that work needs to be around the technical aspect, your footwork into contact, your level change. And when I talk about level change, I talk about this during our commentary as well. And just for everyone at home, when I'm talking about level change is when you're from upright, you level change late. So you need to sink through your hips. It's not, and sometimes it's taught you bend your back, but it's not really, like you do have to bend your back, but your back bends like that, if you can see my hand on screen. It's not so much bend your back as in bend your back and go into contact, because you have no power. So if this is your base and this is your back and then your head's here, that has absolutely no strength of position. You can get pushed over, you can get sat in the armchair, or which is what we call in defence if you get sat back. So what you actually want to be doing, you want to be sinking. So you're sinking through your knees and sink through your hips, and then your back is like, think of an aeroplane taking off. When an aeroplane takes off, it's in that angled position. It's not horizontal to the ground, and it's not directly upright. So you need to be in a really strong base position with your feet underneath your hips, and you need to keep your feet moving, because another concerning trend that I've noticed with defensive is the hip drop. And hip drops occur when sometimes the attacker will move past you and you hang on, and instead of keeping your feet underneath your hips and keep moving your feet, you can just lose your body weight and just try and wrangle them down by using your weight, which is where a lot of that times you swing around and you'll land on the legs or the lower limbs of the opposition, and that's a hip drop. So yeah, So what you want to be doing, you want to be sinking into your contact, so sinking with your knees and your hips, and then you want your back to be in that plane takeoff position, 45 degrees. And then when you hit the defender, you want to be hitting, there's a tackle zone sort of between the rib cage and the hips. If you hit them in that tackle zone, even on a front-on tackle, you'll naturally bend them in half, because that's the way your spine wants to go. When you get hit here, your spine will naturally go that way. If you even get hit from the side, they're going to bend like that, and you want to push them back on that 45-degree angle. And that's called winning the tackle. So if you can sit them back on a 45, you can land them when they're on their back, that's classified as a win in a tackle. But all of that is nothing if you don't move your feet. So you've got to keep your feet moving, you've got to keep your feet under your hips, and when you make contact, you don't stop moving those feet. You need to continue to drive. And that's where you can then win the ruck and win the tackle. If you just sort of catch in the tackle or whatever, there's big problems. So yeah, and then if you've got anyone who has really good late footwork, think any of the fullbacks that come running through, like your Emma Verons, Tamika Uptons, Jamie Chapman's, all those guys, great footwork, you'll get caught out if you plant your feet. So you've got to keep your feet moving. And a lot of it is your pre-contact footwork as well. So if you get your feet as close as possible to the person you're tackling, you've got a better chance of actually winning that contact and winning that tackle, and making sure that you do it in a safe manner. So yeah, there's a few points, obviously, I've gone over there, but to consider, you need to make sure that you're sinking into tackle and doing your level change late, because if you do it early, you're just going to get stepped, and then you throw that lazy arm out, and then generally that you might coat hanger someone accidentally, or you just might just it be an arm grab, and then you actually can hurt your own shoulder if you do that. So you got to level change late. You got to make sure your body position is in good position and keep your feet moving into contact, and make sure that your feet are nice and close to the attacker when you make contact. Once you've made contact, continue to drive through. When you hit, drive your arms through, you wrap, and you do what you call, you break their back. So you just want to squeeze them in really tight. You want to reduce the amount of space between you and your attacker, and then they've got less chance of actually having anywhere to go. If you give them plenty of space where you're just sort of on the ball and there's plenty of space between your two hips, they're pretty much going to try and swing around, get those legs moving and drive you out of the way. So, so a lot of the tackle stuff can be negated with just some really good technique and just making sure that, you keep your feet moving, make sure you hit and stick really nicely. And, so it was just something I've noticed over the last little while. And, it's unfortunate. I was going to say lucky you're not here, but maybe it's unfortunate that you're not here. We could have done a live demo for everybody.
I'm so glad I'm not.
Got the tackle mats out, done it correctly.
Scary. I would say just off the back of that, and I love the way that you break all of this down, because it helps me understand things so much better. And I think a lot of our audience who isn't experienced in playing rugby league, like myself, we're not experienced. It's really helpful. But I think what's really important that I think I'm picking up from what you're saying is that tackle technique is not only important for you to keep the person who you're tackling safe, but to keep yourself safe as well.
Yeah,
so that's
absolutely.
why that matters, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And obviously I'm talking about sort of hitting under the ball with that tackle zone, but even when you are hitting on the ball, you're still sinking into the contact. If you catch in contact, that's where, when you're catching, and we do see a lot of catch tackles, sometimes it just happens, you have to catch. But when you catch, you just got to make sure that you're latching onto the ball straight away. But a lot of the times, if you can level change into contact and come up with a really good dominant tackle, the catch tackle is negated a little bit, because you're making a dominant tackle, the second person comes in over the top, finishes it off, it's a slow play the ball for the attack, you've won that, you've slowed their ruck down, it's given your defensive line time to get organised, and then they're ready to get up with line speed on the next tackle. And it just makes it really hard for the attacking side to sort of get themselves out of that loop.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Roo. As always, the Learning with Light and Easy segment is easily my favourite in this podcast. You are listening to the NRLW Weekly Podcast with Marley Silva and Ruan Sims. Thanks to Light and Easy and Harvey Norman. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the NRLW Weekly Podcast with Marley Silva and Ruan Sims. Thanks to Light and Easy and Harvey Norman. Go Harvey Norman, up to 20% off HP and Acer computers in store and online now. Roo,
well,
you
Marley,
like to introduce this bit.
Yeah, well, yes. Marley, you might love my segment, the Learning with Light and Easy, but I love your segment. Marley, what has caught your sideline eye this week? It's been a year of firsts, hasn't it?
It certainly has, and that excites me. I feel like every week we are gifted something brand new to celebrate and to be excited about. And for me, this week is really special. It's the very first official Indigenous round that the NRLW is included in. So last year, the Sharks and the Dragons NRLW sides out of their own passion, wore Indigenous jerseys and played a game together that they considered their own kind of exhibition match of being like an Indigenous round. But this is the first time officially all the teams are included. They all have their incredible Indigenous designed jerseys, stories to tell, ways they've been connecting with community. And of course, this is such a special week for the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander girls who play our great game, and there are so many of them. But I think it's also really special for the non-Indigenous players to understand and to learn more about the founding culture of our country, and for specifically the cultures and the communities that are connected to where each of our clubs are based. So I ducked up to Townsville for a hot little minute on Tuesday to do some shoots with both the men's and women's playing group. But when I was speaking to, Tallulah Tillett and Bree Chester, who are two very passionate First Nations women in the Cowboys side, to have that sort of complemented by then talking to Jakaya Whitfeld, who is non-Indigenous but has such a great passion and love and respect for Aboriginal communities. It was just that perfect example of why rounds like this are so special. They give opportunity for all of our girls to share a bit more about themselves and to bring that culture and bring that connectedness, I think, in the playing group. And they were all really emotional, and that made me emotional. I also have to say the Bulldogs did send me their Indigenous Round jersey with my name on the back, which is probably the highlight of my life so far.
Now I need to hit the Sharks up for an Indigenous jersey with my name on it.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, all of it, I think it's very joyous, and it's a beautiful thing that invites everyone in, I think, in a way that's like very celebratory. And it's week 1 of 2. So we're sort of following the AFL model now. So their Sir Doug Nicholls round goes over 2 weekends. So every team has a home game. And for the first time this year, we're also doing, in both the men's and women's, 2 rounds of Indigenous round this weekend and the next. And that's all I keep thinking about for this week. I cannot wait to see all those incredible jerseys out on the pitch.
Yeah, and I think it's a beautiful way to celebrate the oldest culture in the world, and it is our culture. It is part of our history, and like what a proud moment for all First Nations people in Australia, but for everybody in Australia to celebrate what is such a rich history. And yeah, I love Indigenous Round. It is wonderful. Obviously, being a woman of Fijian descent, that culture element is so important, and I think it adds beautiful colour and beautiful depth to our game, and to obviously just celebrating and recognising those incredible people that have gone before us.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, keep an eye out. There's also going to be so many activations at all the games if you're heading to them. Lots of opportunities for connecting with the community that are, a part of the club more broadly. So can't wait for that. Let's get into your questions, guys. I love hearing from you. You always have great questions. So the first one I have to ask is from our mate Jessie. Jessie, you've always got great questions, and you've come to the table with this. It comes in two parts. Mm-hmm. Do you think Magic Round in Newcastle was a success despite the weather? And would you like to see it remain there next year in Newcastle, or taken to another region, Wollongong or Gosford? And with a lot of squads being hampered by injuries, when will the top 24 become a top 30 like the men?
Yeah, well, Jesse was actually one of our winners for the double pass for NRLW Magic Round, so I reckon he had a lot of time to come up with these questions, and they're good ones. They're good ones too. So to the first part of the question, it was a success, considering how poor the weather was, and I do feel like we would have had significantly more numbers if it wasn't raining sideways for 2 days or 3 or 4 days actually leading up to it, and then the whole weekend. I know that more people would have turned out because Newcastle love their football. Whether I think I'd probably like to see it stay there next year, just to give the Novocastrians another opportunity to really turn out. But again, would not be averse to it going to another region like Wollongong, like Gosford, even Redcliffe, maybe somewhere like that, where it's a beautiful boutique-y stadium that has a lot of people in the area that love their football. And I think that's why Redcliffe would probably be a great area. And then obviously it allows those Queensland teams to have more of their supporters coming down as well to that. So that could be a potential. Would love to see that. I think that would be fantastic. And I'm sure that is part of the thinking going forward, that you would move that around, that it wouldn't just be stuck, or not stuck, but it wouldn't just stay in one town for the whole time. Yes. And I think that, especially for the women's game, that ability to move it around will just get more people engaged and loving it. And all of the places that he spoke about and that I just mentioned on, they're all footy mad. They absolutely love it. Yeah. But also, I would also love it to go out somewhere like a Mudgee or something like that, where not a lot of football gets played out there of the top level, and just to have it somewhere like that, or even Bathurst, where you can get a lot of people who wouldn't normally get access to it to be able to go there, would be absolutely fantastic as well. So, yeah. Yes. Good question.
It was a big question.
Yeah.
So the second part was about the top 30 squads.
Yes. So, yes, unfortunately we have seen a lot of injuries. So that has been a shame. But I do think that very soon it will have to increase the number of players, because at the moment we have the top 24 and we have 4 development players as well. I think we'll probably see that pop up very, very quickly, or move up to more very quickly. But again, it all comes down to funding and the money and the CBA, all like so the business agreement that has been signed off on. 2028 is when the new broadcast deal gets done. It's when I believe the new CBA will be done as well, and I'm sure that all of these things will be discussed through there. I would not be surprised if they potentially look at just adding another couple of extra slots for next year, just considering how many injuries they have had. And it does test the depth. I mean, only having 24 players to fall back on does test the depth. But when we go into the chat later on about previews for the games, what it then does allow is some people who may have dropped off the radar for whatever reason to have the opportunity to come back in through the Harvey Norman competition in New South Wales and the BMD competition in Queensland. So the fact that obviously New South Wales have been doing it for a couple of years now, having it in alignment with NRLW, and then obviously BMD Cup have come on board and they're doing theirs in alignment with the NRLW as well. It allows those players to continue to play good football and then potentially be looked at and say, okay, well, we are decimated with injury. We have a partnership with this Harvey Norman club or this BMD club. You know, we can draw from that talent pool and we can use them in moving up. And obviously the biggest one that pops to mind now is Maddie Studden getting a start this weekend with the Dragons. So she's been playing really good football in Harvey Norman competition. Obviously I watch a lot of those games as well. So to see her get that opportunity to come back into the top grade, that's why we have to have these competitions running in alignment with the NRLW. But I also agree, Jessie, I think that, we'll be moving up to more players very soon. And by 2028, I believe, well, for me, I think 2028 we have to go full-time. And I'm not saying 17 clubs full-time. I'm saying that it has to be a year-long competition, however that looks. That's what I would like to see happen. And then by 2028, we need to have a 30-player roster. And then you can still have your development players there too.
Wholeheartedly agree with you, Rue, there. And hopefully that's what we see in, just a couple of years' time. The next question comes from Marco. Hi, ladies. The Roosters are on an incredible winning streak. Rue, as a coach, what makes them so hard to beat? Is it just talent, or is there something in their system that no other team has been able to crack yet? And are they already a certainty for the grand final? Nothing's certain, Marco.
Nothing's certain. Nothing is certain, Marco. However, they put themselves in a great position to be there in that first weekend of October. And it is a combination of the two things that you touched on. They are incredibly talented players. The system is sound. But the biggest thing is each of those players understand their role within that system and they are able to execute their role within that system. Now, you can have great individual players, but players playing as individuals will never win a game of football because sometimes there'll be push and pull and other players want to do different things and whatever else. But with the Roosters, they just have a really clear vision of what they need to do in their system and what their role is. And they do, for the majority of the time, they execute that really well. I think we saw probably that first half against the Broncos where they just looked absolutely unstoppable is a really great snapshot into that mindset. But then on the flip side, you saw the Broncos push back and then really fight their way back into that game. So nobody is unbeatable. However, you have to bring your best game of football if you want to beat the Roosters because they won't beat themselves. They may make a couple of errors here and there. And then I know for a fact that their completion rate hasn't been where probably John Strange would be very happy with. He'd want to see them completing higher more consistently, but they just have the ability to just turn a switch and put on these incredible plays. And obviously Taron Aiken is back in the fold now as well. Corbin Baxter is back this week. That kind of quality being added into an already good roster means they're going to continue to get better. So, you just have to bring your best game when you play the Roosters, but their system is sound. They understand their role within that system and they execute, majority of the time, they execute it really, really well. And then they also have those individuals who have brilliance that are able to pull things out of a hat and come up with incredible plays. So it is a combination of everything. But, like I said, you've got to play your best game of football and you have to really turn the screws on the Roosters if you want to try and beat them.
Yeah. Hey, there's another thing that I saw as a sideline eye over the weekend that is terrifying because this Roosters side is so strong. And their one major injury they've seen this season was Jamie Frassard. And she said to me on the weekend, I think maybe she's a little bit delulu, but I love it for her. She didn't end up having surgery on her elbow. She reckons she's going to be back in 3 weeks. And I was like, sis, you can't even stretch it all the way out, but I love your passion. And I think that just speaks to how much those girls just like are so hungry for it. And like that fight in there makes that team, something else. So I hope that for you, Jamie. But
Look, if anyone could do it,
God.
if anyone could do it,
It's her.
Frez could do it.
I said to her, you're that tough.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't be
100%.
surprised, but.
Yeah, 100%. So if anyone could do it, Frez could do it. But but it'll then just come down. She's got a pretty high pain threshold. So it'll just come down to how much pain she can handle. And if she can handle it, which we know she can, she'll be back in a very short period of time. I mean, it's the same issue that Emma Verron is currently having. She's got a pretty high pain threshold as well. So just whatever she can tolerate, she can tolerate. So, yeah, but I know they're...
Toughest girls in the world, eh?
Yeah, they're an impressive outfit, the Tricolours, and they're impressive for a reason because they're really well drilled. But they have a very clear vision, a very clear identity and a very clear vision, and that is a lot of it. That clarity really helps simplify your thinking as a player, what your role is, and what you need to do to execute your role. So, yeah, it's a lot of those things put together, but at the end of the day, it's just that clarity of vision and connection that team have to be excellent.
Absolutely. Hey, let's get it stuck into our previews for round 6. I can't believe we're basically halfway through the regular season already. Well, it all kicks off on Saturday at Jubilee, the local derby of the Dragons and the Sharks.
Well, it's quite good to see that it's the Dragons and the Sharks opening the first weekend of Indigenous Round, especially considering they were the two teams that ran their own unofficial Indigenous Round last week with their jerseys. So I think that's really great to see. Both teams, unfortunately, decimated with injury. The Dragons, unfortunately, missing Ray McGregor through suspension, and I hope that her head knock is okay as well. I was actually really concerned for her. So hopefully she's all cleared and ready to go. So when she does come back from suspension, she'll just hit the ground running. Obviously, she's incredible for them and she does a lot of their organising. So that means that this week, like I spoke about, Maddie Studden gets a start at 6. And like I said, she's been playing really well at Harvey Norman level competition. And Casey Ray returns from her head injury as well, and Casey will wear the number 7. So it'll be really great to see how those two combine, how they work, and how they move the team around the park. Another unfortunate injury for the Dragons being Nita Maynard-Perrin.
Yeah.
That's a big loss because she does a lot of work through the middle. She's got a really good engine and she's really zippy out of that 9 position. So that means that Zali Hopkins will start at 9 and she'll probably have to get through a lot of work at 9. But she can play there. That's no issue. So she'll be doing a lot of work out of 9, I think. And also we see Bronte Wilson start for the Dragons this week, which I think is pretty cool. And then the Sharks, obviously Tyler King is named at fullback. That unfortunate HIA to captain Tiana Penatani-Gray means that Grace Lee Wicks will be back in at centre again, and that's obviously a big loss just with her leadership. But Grace is a very capable centre, and I thought she was great on debut as well, and she just does what's asked of her, which I think is fantastic. But what that does mean is that Quincy Dodd actually gets to captain the side this week, which I think is very, very special, especially considering it is Indigenous Round and she is a proud Indigenous woman. It's great to see her get that opportunity. And, Steph Faulkner returns from her HIA, as does Brooke Anderson. So this is going to be a really big test for both sides, just to test their depth, to test that connection with, some new faces in there. I think this is going to be a really, really good game to watch. Yeah. Really good game. I'm tipping the Sharks away from home to come up with this win. But I am very excited to see Maddie Studden back playing. Yeah. So I'm wishing Maddie all the best, but I'm going for the Sharks.
I tell you what, it'll be a great crowd too, because the men play straight after, and it's one of the biggest games on the calendar for both those clubs because of that rivalry. So I think it'll be great, and I couldn't be happier to see Maddie back out there. She's fought really bloody hard. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
The next game on our lineup for round 6 is the Knights and the Tigers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the Knights held their opposition to nil last week, and it was the first 0-0 halftime score. So this year has been so many firsts. We've had first NRLW Magic Round, we had our first ever draw, we had our first ever 0-0 scoreline at halftime. And I thought that first half the Raiders were very good. I'll go into that later when it pops up. But then coming out of halftime, I just saw a real switch in attention from the Knights. Not that they weren't attentive in the first half. They were getting through their work, but they were just really dialed in on what they needed to do to get the job done in the second half. I thought Jessie Southwell played very well at 7, just conducting her troops around, picking her moments to run, kicking. Once she got her radar in, thought was fantastic. And again, their outside backs so strong, like Gallagher, Vete Welsh, Parker gets through a lot of work. We didn't see much out of Tess Staines because the ball didn't really get out there too much because of the weather, but she's a speedster. And I think this is going to be another big test for the West Tigers. And they've been so gallant this year. They've been really, really gallant, and they've fought really hard. And they've had themselves in the frame, but their opposition has just been that little bit better. And I have to say, like, Kezzy Apps has been playing incredible football this year. And she obviously just re-signed with them for a longer-term deal, and I think you can tell that she's very comfortable there in a positive way, not comfortable in I'm just going to sit back and let things roll. She just takes her leadership role very seriously, and she's been very, very strong for them. And, I think this is going to be a really tough one for the West Tigers, especially because it's going to be up in Newcastle, the game, and I think the Knights will get the job done, but the West Tigers will push the Knights. But I think the Knights get the win. And Eva McEwen returns for the Knights as well.
Yes, yes. And the Tigers have, they haven't laid down and just lost.
No.
They've fought all the way through. But, you do get the feeling that the Knights will be too strong there. Yep. The next game, our last one for Saturday, will be the Bulldogs and the Warriors. Another game that will be a double-header with the men, so there'll be a good crowd out there. And I think this will be another great challenge. Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to this game. And I think all of our matchups this weekend are ones that I'm really excited about. Really excited about. And this is definitely one of them. I mean, the Warriors played so well last week and came up with that victory, and a hard-fought victory as well. And the Bulldogs obviously got pushed for 80 minutes last week for the first time ever, and nothing could split them and the Titans. And I think it's going to be really key to see how the back three of the Bulldogs handle the kicking game of Maliepo in particular. I feel like she does a lot of the attacking kicks to the air. So that's going to be very interesting to see how Bilecki handles that. She got a little gun shy last week and missed a couple, caught a couple. And, so it'll be good to see how she backs up this week and just works on that throughout the week. And I think it's going to be really important, again, for the whole defensive structure of the Warriors to try and contain what Taylor Preston and Ash Quinlan do, because their forward pack set such a great standard for the Bulldogs. They get a good roll on, and those two just really step up when it's necessary. And obviously we spoke about Taylor Preston's kicking game, which was epic last week. So the Warriors are going to have to look at sending a lot of traffic down Preston's way to force her to make tackles. Not to try and run her over or do anything silly like that, but just force her to make tackles and get up off the deck continuously. Because when you do that to a half, it takes a little bit of sting out of their attack. If you're forcing them to make tackles or forcing them to get up and down off the ground consistently, it just drains the battery a little bit quicker. And sometimes you can take a little bit of sting out of their attack for that. And that's why you'll see what we call getting at tags or looking at who your indicators are. You want to get at them and try and force them to make tackles. So that's a strategic standpoint when it comes to the game. Because, if you can get at those attacking players, force them to make tackles, like I said, drains the battery a little bit quicker. But then also I think both forward packs are quite well balanced, and I think they're quite well matched. It is a great step up for their Bulldogs to have Alexis Tournier return from that hamstring strain. I think she'll definitely add a lot through the middle. And I'm saying Bulldogs for this game because it is a home game, and I think the home crowd will get them over the line. But I feel like it's going to be an incredible matchup. So yeah, Bulldogs, but by a small margin.
Okay. Then we get to our Sunday fixture and we will see the Titans and the Roosters.
This one is interesting because the Titans could push the Roosters all the way. They really could. Like I said earlier, I thought Jamie Chapman was really strong last week for the Titans. Again, it'll be a really good test for the back three to handle the kicking game of Kelleher and Aiken, because both of them have a kick in them, and Kelleher's kick can really rattle a back three because she can get up and under it, and she does this kick. I call it an ugly beautiful kick or a beautiful ugly kick because it looks awful in the air, and if you're the fullback, you're just going, why? Why have you forsaken me? and then you've got that kick chase that the Roosters have, and they just sprint down and put so much pressure on the receiver. So it'll be really key to see how the back three handle Kelleher's high kicks, and also if they do sit too far back and allow, because they're expecting that big deep kick from Kelleher, Aiken has a really smart short kick where she can just pop it over the top, and if your winger and fullback are set too deep, she'll take advantage of it and she'll just rip space off you. So it's going to be really important, I think, the Titans' defensive efforts this week. My heart wants to say Titans, but my head is saying that the Roosters will just have too much quality and they'll get the job done. But I'd love to see the Titans get a win up at home. I just think the Roosters will just have a little bit too much in the tank.
Yeah, if people remember last year when the Titans and the Roosters faced each other up in the Gold Coast, it got very, very fiery and there was a little bit of push and shove. And I think that, the passion is there, and it's a beautiful sunny day in the Gold Coast, and I wonder if something similar is going to happen. Yeah, but I do believe the Roosters ended up winning by quite a fair margin. So hopefully it's a tighter one this time around. Yeah. Then it will be the Raiders and the Broncos. I will be back down in Canberra. I'm going to Canberra twice in one weekend. Friday night for the men's, Sunday for the girls. They just want to keep me really cold, the rugby league gods. I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, let's talk about the Raiders because they did have a lot more promise in that first half than what we've seen in a couple of games.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the first half was particularly good from the Raiders. And then, excuse me, a lot of the things that Samaima Taufa spoke about pre-game, just about that execution, doing the small things right, was all there in that first 35 minutes. And unfortunately, it dropped off in the second half. And that's when the cracks started to show, and that's where the opposition really sort of ran through them. I thought, like I said, it was a 0-0 scoreline for the first time in NRLW history. So that first half was very good, and they turned up to play. They packed their shoulders. It's probably the best game I've seen out of Samaima Taufa down there, up there last weekend. And returning home, I think it is going to be a challenge for them because they don't have a great record at home. And obviously they haven't had a win so far this season. And to come up against the Broncos, who is another team where they're not going to beat themselves, you have to play your best football to beat them. And that showed in that Roosters-Broncos game. So that's going to be a really big challenge. It's also I saw that Robbins Retty hasn't been named, so she's been dropped. And also seeing Grace Kemp hasn't been named either. So they might lose a bit of size there. I'm not sure whether that's through injury or anything. So that's going to be a really big challenge for them. But I think that the Broncos are going to get the job done this weekend.
Yeah. I get the feeling that it'll be the same there. And then our final game will be the Eels and the Cowboys. And before you give me your answer there, we actually had one more listener question. This one came from Donna. Donna was specifically referring to the Eels and Dragons match we saw, which closed out Magic Round on the weekend. The Eels obviously fought their way back, and it was, quite impressive. Do you think that could be a turning point for them in their season?
For the Eels, a turning point for the Eels. Yeah. I actually think the turning point for the Eels was game one. Like they travelled to Cronulla everyone thought the Sharks were going to win, and then they turned it around on them. Obviously, then they went to New Zealand and couldn't come up with a point, but then they came back and had another win. So I actually think the Eels season is on track already. They had, obviously, Kennedy Charrington returned last week. She's unfortunately out this week through that HIA. So that is a big loss. But I think that the Eels are well on track. And, you know, I think Rachel Pearson wouldn't have been happy with her first half kicking game last week, but she adjusted that in the second half. And they fought all the way to the end against the Dragons. So to see them do that, I thought was really good. And, I reckon the Eels will get the job done against the Cowboys this week. It's a home game for them as well. So, I think it's going to be a good one. And I'm going to be out there this game, so I'll get to see them live and watch them warm up, you know, the way I like to. And probably have
so we'll know what's going to happen then.
Probably have more of an idea after I watch the warm up. But, and obviously they've had a few injuries, which hurts. Like we spoke about, Kennedy Charrington, Cassie Hiku as well, unfortunately, Rory Owen as well. So that is a really big loss. But we are seeing Tyler Amiatu return into the side this week. So, I think it's going to be a really great game. But, the Eels might just get this one.
Okay. All right. I cannot wait. I hope all of you who are listening at home can't wait as well. You can watch every single one of the NRLW games this round live and free on 9 and 9 now. Get into it. You know, it's halfway through the season now. You've got to, you know, if you haven't been following along, you want to get on the bandwagon of whoever your team is right now in case they're there at the end. You need to be able to say, I've been listening from this point. I've been there since this point, okay? That's just a hot tip from me. Thanks for hanging out with us. We love doing this, the NRLW Weekly Podcast. Roo, it's always a pleasure to hear your genius. Break it down. You can catch us every single week of the NRLW season. And this is all thanks to Light and Easy and Harvey Norman. We'll catch you next time.